Good morning. We are very familiar with the Beatitudes of Jesus. And the version that we are most familiar with is the one that comes with 8 Beatitudes. That's the one that we received through the account of St. Matthew, the evangelist, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount that begins in Matthew 5. But today, the 6th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Cycle C, gives us an alternative version to the Beatitudes, because the one that we get today is the version of St. Luke, which is a little bit different. In St. Luke, the Beatitudes are not 8, but 4. The sermon is not on a mount, but it's on a plain. And the 4 Beatitudes are balanced by 4 woes. The 4 Beatitudes of St. Luke the Evangelist, which are pronounced by Jesus, are words of encouragement for the poor, the hungry, the sorrowful, and the persecuted on the account of Jesus. We are very familiar with them. Blessed are you, blessed are you. The reward will be great in heaven. But Luke then balances those 4 Beatitudes or blessings with 4 woes. And the 4 woes of Luke are warnings to the overconfidence that can be felt by the rich, the satisfied, the joyful, and those who always receive honor. But what is the difference between those 4 Beatitudes and the 4 woes that we hear in the Gospel of Luke of today? This is what Jesus says at the end of the Beatitudes, if we pay attention. Blessed are you when people hate you and they exclude and insult you and denounce your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Behold, your reward will be great in heaven, for their ancestors treated the prophets in the same way. That's how the 4th Beatitude ends. Now, notice the difference with the ending of the 4 woes. This is how the woes end. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for their ancestors treated the false prophets in this way. Right? Did you catch the difference? The difference between the Beatitudes and the woes, it's about being a prophet or a false prophet. That's how St. Luke divides the text. Blessed are those, the prophets, woe are false prophets. Now, we are Americans, and as Americans, we love happy endings because we grew up watching Disney movies, right? So it's easy for us to think that the Beatitudes are for me and the woes are for someone else, of course, right? We have domesticated Jesus to the point of thinking that he is a nice prophet that only says nice things, and the nice things that he says, surely he says about us, right? So I am sure that when I proclaim the 4 woes in today's gospel, perhaps it surprised you or maybe made you a little uncomfortable. They made me uncomfortable when I was preparing for this homily. Of course, I would rather just hear the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes of Luke, accompanied by the woes, are certainly a shake-up. And indeed, that's their purpose. That's why they are right there. Because as an American, I think the Beatitudes are for me and the woes are for someone else. And so they come and just shake us up. Actually, both are for us. The Beatitudes and the woes are for us. Talking about shake up, I'll give you a perfect example of that. I don't know if you've been watching the news lately. I'm sure you have. All of you have been watching the news. Kind of a big shake-up is happening in the country, isn't it? And in the world, actually. And so it all depends what you watch, right? So if you turn to one channel, the world is coming to an end right now. So you might as well just pack your things and be ready, because the second coming is about to happen. Now you switch to the other channel. We are going to start glorious times. This is the time of redemption. The reality is that you can play exactly that same tape 4 years ago, 4 years before, 4 years before, 4 years from now, 4 years after that. It's the same story. It's the same story. It's the same story, it just flips from one side to the other every time. And every time each of us think that the Beatitude is for me and the woe is for the other side, right? Let us remember that the church doesn't fall into the silos of partisanship. The church has been around for 2,000 years. The church has lived through empires, kingdoms, invasions, dictatorships, civil wars, world wars, republics, democracies. Through it all, the church will always be on the side of the vulnerable because of her pro-life stance. And this is why, for example, the Holy Father has most recently written a letter to the bishops of the United States, speaking on behalf of vulnerable migrants who may end up paying the price because of those who committed atrocities. I realize that this is really hard for the partisan American mindset to put on the heart of Christ. But remember that the blessing and the woe are both for me and they are both for us. Because each and every one of us have the temptation of becoming what? False prophets. We all have that temptation. I'm going to give you another example just for your own self-reflection. Of course, it's a self-reflection for me. I remember back when I was ordained about 18 years ago. That's about the time when Facebook started. Remember? And back in those days, it was for the young people. Now it is for us. All right? Back in those days, Facebook used to be fun. It was a lot of fun. When I had to be absent from the United States for 3 years to be in Rome doing my biblical studies, it was Facebook that kept me in touch with the people of the Saginaw Diocese, because I didn't have a parish, I didn't have a specific ministry. Those were 3 long, lonely years, and Facebook was what kept me connected to our beloved people of the Diocese of Saginaw. It was fun. In the last few years, though, social media, even though it is an integral part of the world today, and now even with artificial intelligence added to the mix, I have personally grown very disenchanted with how we human beings make use or abuse of these modern technologies. Nowadays, I see Facebook as a necessary evil. I just have it because it gives me an opportunity to post my homilies, and that's about it, because that's what I do every Sunday. I just record them, upload them to the YouTube page, and then I just post the homily, and that's about it. If people want to hear them, they actually have to click to actually listen to them. It's totally optional. And so I try to make it as least intrusive as possible, or as least imposing as possible. It's completely optional. Why do I do that? Because the amount of anger and hatred that I see or I have seen in people's posts is really sickening. And it's sad. This is my opinion, by the way, okay? So nowadays, I don't check people's profiles anymore. You know, that endless scrolling, I don't do it. I haven't done it for years now. Because the amount of vitriol is horrendous. It's really sad. It's really sad. And everyone thinks of themselves as what? Prophets. Everybody thinks of themselves as prophets. We all think of ourselves as prophets. You know what is even funny is that when I go to post my homily, inevitably, because I have to open Facebook, poof, immediately pushes 2 or 3 posts of somebody. I don't want to see them, but it pushes it into it, even if I'm not scrolling. And again, the anger and the vitriol, pure hatred, it's just sad. It's not of God. Remember, the Beatitudes and the woes are both for me. The Beatitudes and the woes are for each and every one of us. And they mark the difference between a prophet and a false prophet. Perhaps St. Luke's Beatitudes and woes are an invitation to us to look into our own hearts, all of us, regardless of where we are, all of us, to see deep within us those places of comfort and places of self-reliance, and that personal sense of superiority that we think we have when, for example, we stand before our keyboards. May the Lord make us humble to accept His blessing, to accept His beatitude, and to acknowledge that the woe is not for thee, the woe is also for me. Amen.